right, everyone. Hello, this is Elaine and Lydia again coming back at you for another candid conversation. And I want to make sure that we give a bit of a disclaimer, because this topic could actually be potentially triggering to some people. And I'm grateful that Lydia brought this topic up to me because it's a trend that I've been seeing. I would say I started seeing it around the pandemic, like 2019, 2020. That's really when I started to see a lot of prevalence of this sort of behavior. So Lydia, go ahead and tell us exactly what we'll be discussing today.
So today's topic is public humiliation. Essentially, that is when parents go on social media platforms and humiliate the child. And we had watched some videos about that. It was
on YouTube. So I was going to, and I still may just put some still shots of it, but there's still a lot of YouTube videos on this. And the ones that we've been seeing was like, for one, it will be on the kid's profile. So the kid, maybe they'll have them be on live, and then the mom, it's usually the mom. Have you seen one with the dad?
I have not, actually, no.
I think the one I saw with the dad, I think he had the son standing out in the middle of an intersection and he was holding up a sign. But as far as like any live or any Instagram, Snapchat, any of that sort of stuff, they've always been the mothers. What other similarity have you seen with these parents that humiliate their children publicly on social media?
They've mostly been women of color. Haven't seen any white women on here. I saw one Mexican woman with her daughter, I think. But that's the...
So tell me your thoughts about that and I'll tell you mine.
First of all, I just want to say that I think discipline is good, 100%. But I think that sometimes people go a little bit too far, and I think we should set boundaries of which is not discipline at all and which is too much, and you're like going too far to the point where children are like desensitized to when the discipline that you're giving them.
Desensitized, what do you mean?
Like, for example, whoopings. Like you get so many whoopings that it doesn't even hurt anymore, and it's just like, oh, like it's time for another whooping. It's whatever.
Now look, y'all. I'm from Texas, okay? Lydia is a transplant to New Mexico by way of her father moving her out there. But in case y'all don't know, a whooping is a spanking, aka corporal punishment, or what have you. So I would just say, to what Lydia was saying about sometimes parents may go overboard with their form of discipline as it pertains to public humiliation. One thing that I brought up to her was like, so a lot of times the youth, they have these social platforms and they create a persona or an identity that is not congruent with their authentic self. So I'll just say that. And so maybe, and like I said, I was looking on social media, YouTube, and looking at these videos when she brought this topic to me for us to discuss. And I was just thinking, well, why do you think the parent, would go to that length to, and they were pretty rash too. Like, I felt bad for the kid listening to some of these. And then there are some where they're like getting whoopings on the lives and all that. Like, and I believe just having that amount of embarrassment, like to have that on, even if the persona that the kid has online is a facade, that is humiliating.
I agree. Also, I said that I would feel like kind of wanting to end my life. Sorry, I know that's a little harsh, but I wouldn't know how to cope with that, and I would have the feeling of like spiraling out of control, especially if my school friends, which some of the lives have it's their actual children's personal accounts, and like people from my school started to see that, I would just feel very overwhelmed and like wouldn't know what to do.
And that's disturbing to me as a parent to hear that the first thing that my kid, if she were in that position, were to do, she would likely end her life. And I understand that because there's been this unfortunate trend of bullying and all that. And I have to remember as a parent, like, times have changed. Like, there were times where I can think, okay, I was in fourth grade, and my teacher and my mom had a really good relationship. And so she would call my mom when I was acting up in class. There have been multiple times where my mom came to the school and I would get whoopings. Sometimes the kids, well, I would say not sometimes, but there were one or two occasions where I had my classmates walk in while I was getting a whooping. Do you know how embarrassing that was for me as a kid? Now, did my friends or whoever's in the class laugh about it? Yes, some of them did. But then we got over it. But the thing about social media is they can play it over and over and over and over and over, and the kid never has a chance to
live that down. I totally agree with that, and sometimes I feel like you have to remind yourself in embarrassing moments that you're taking this more to heart than others, but like you said with social media, they can keep replaying it, and it's just like everybody, and then for some people it just becomes like a joke, but for most it's like very traumatizing.
And also, I mentioned to Liddy too that, parents in some situations, that public humiliation works online. I hate to say that, but in certain instances, like I've seen, there was one where the girl, I'm assuming it was her mom, was making her recite everything that she had done on camera, but she was saying it out loud. Like, to hear herself say that she was sending provocative pictures to people and doing these videos with half her clothes on and all this sort of stuff. Sometimes it helps to hear the lewdness if it's coming from their own.
And then you get a chance, because when you're talking to yourself, you really get a chance to realize and really listen to how crazy that sounds. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I do agree that it works, but like my mom had mentioned before, you just have to know your child and what they can tolerate, and if like going that far will be detrimental for them, or it will be helpful. Right,
and that's what we were mentioning too. Like, with some children that are emotionally intelligent, or they're very emotionally sensitive, or even empathic children, those sorts of things, like, you cannot impose the same type of discipline as you would maybe another kid that you have. So it's like excessive punishment. And I just want to touch on one other thing too, because I know we are really working to keep these under a certain time frame, because our goal with these candid conversations is really to incite conversation between parents and their kids, because these sorts of things, of course, maybe you may not encounter in your own household, but maybe your kid has a really big insight that they could share with you, or as a parent, just getting to have these conversations with your kid shows you a part of them, and then that way you will get to learn your kid even more, to where you'll know what works for them, what doesn't, how best you are able to connect with them, and how best you are able to teach them. So one last thing, I just want to end our candid conversation with this. You brought up the racial differences as far as like discipline. So can we both agree that we're not generalizing here?
We are not.
So like, not, although online, like as we were looking on YouTube, the prevalence, most of them were people of color, but the Anglo-Saxon folks, they're not putting this stuff online, or if they're punishing their kid, they're doing it another way. Did you have a personal experience, or have you ever, were you ever around any of your friends that are of a different nationality or culture and witnessed how their parents discipline them?
I feel like in some races, I think it really just depends the type of parent, what kind of environment they grew up in. But I feel like some people are more of like a pushover and don't really discipline their children and are kind of like underdoing it, and they're not doing it to the right like extent to where the children learn the lesson, and they're like, man, I don't want to do that again because what they did was bad, but it wasn't traumatizing to where like I really would hold resentment towards them. But I feel like in some cases, yeah, they are not disciplining their children at all, and so now that their children are like overpowering them and doing what they want.
That sounds like it's going to open up a whole new conversation. So I'm going to go ahead and we're going to close it off because we seem to be having quite a hot conversation. So you guys, thank you so much for your attention. We read our comments, so please leave us comments below to let us know what you think about this topic, and also any recommendations of things you want to hear me and Liddy talk about in our candid conversations. You guys take care, and until next time.